"Class, I need your attention," the teacher exclaimed. The teacher was a fairly large reptilian-like creature called a Vinnook. He was intelligent and extremely skilled in teaching. The class focused on what the teacher was about to say. The teacher had never sounded this stern. "We are having an exchange student from Earth, a human," the teacher announced. "From the Hellworld?" a student asked. The student, a thin biped with an extreme amount of fur called a ZN, was terrified. He had never met a death welder, and this creature was more extreme than any death welder. Information about this new species and planet had only recently been released, about a month ago, making galactic news. A new world had to be given a new classification just for how bad it was. "She'll be here in 10 minutes, the teacher said. The class was curious, but also terrified, wondering what she would look like. 10 minutes passed, and a knock on the door was heard. "That must be them," the teacher said. The teacher opened the door, and the principal walked in with the human girl. The principal whispered into the girl's ear, and the girl started speaking. "Hello, I'm Evie Rose, and I'm from Earth. It's very nice to meet all of you," the girl spoke in perfect galactic standard. The girl was a lot smaller than what the class had expected. Even the smaller students were taller, but she wasn't the smallest. A few students noticed the girl had a fair bit of muscle on her. "Class, Evie is fine with any of you asking questions," the teacher said. It took a couple of seconds, but a few students raised their hands. "Ard, you were the first to put your hand up," the teacher said. Ard, a predator, had a bit more bravery than most, so he raised his hand first. "I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but how come you're so small?" "I thought you came from a Hellworld," Ovad asked. "That's a great question. The reason I, and a fair bit of humanity, are small is due to our high gravity. Our planet's gravity pulls us down at 9.8 ms2, Eve said. Most of the class gasped. The average gravity pull was usually less than half of that. "Wait, how are you walking so casually? Shouldn't you be unaccustomed to the gravity?" Ovad asked, confused. "All right," Evie said, pulling up her sleeve. "I am wearing weighted clothes. Actually, it's heavier than what I would feel on Earth," Eve said. "That's incredible," Ovad said. A few moments passed, and Ovad couldn't think of any more questions, so another student asked one. "Sanu, you can go," the teacher said. Sanu, from a world of insect-like creatures called Serov, known for their good vision, asked, "I was wondering, when you pulled up your..." Sanu stuttered, realizing he didn't have a word for what she pulled up. "Oh, it's called a sleeve. It's a part of my clothes," Evie said, pulling on her clothes a bit. "Thank you. When you pulled up your sleeve, I noticed your arm." "Is it made of metal?" Sanu asked. "Yes," Evie stuttered a bit. She had only recently gotten the prosthetic. "May I ask why?" Sanu asked. "It's no problem. I had just gotten it recently. I was attacked while hiking by one of Earth's native predators called a bear. My arm was too badly damaged to be fixed in any way, so they had to amputate it. Luckily, this prosthetic is one I wanted to be better and stronger than the original." Evie explained. The class was shocked. Only the toughest species could survive that, but with lifelong debilitating injuries. To survive and thrive was unheard of. "Thank you for the explanation," Sanu said, somewhat sickened. A few more people asked questions until it was nearing the end of the class period. "Okay, class, that is enough questions. We need to get ready for the next lesson," the teacher said loudly. The bell rang, and the students pulled out the next class's books. "Hey, sit next to me," Ovad said to Evie. "All right," Evie replied with a smirk. Ovad had been extremely happy to hear that another sentient predator was in the galaxy. There were only a few predators in the galaxy and way fewer in the school. "All right, class, we will be talking about the most recent development in weaponry," the teacher said. "I'd like to add a disclaimer. This weapon is probably the most extreme one we've created," the teacher explained, sweating from nervousness. The teacher had only recently gotten news of this weapon, and it terrified him. "I'll send you an image of what it looks like, so you can try and guess what it is," the teacher said. Evie pulled up the image of the bomb and began looking. Something was wrong. It looked familiar. It had wires around it and was circular with some small entrances. She could have sworn she'd seen this before. "Does anyone have an idea?" the teacher said. The room remained silent. "All right, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it is going to be tested in about 3 minutes," the teacher said, grabbing a remote to turn on the classroom's television. A mock city and a ship appeared on the TV where the device was set, with researchers very far away. Reminds me of old nuclear tests," Evie thought. "Wait, old nuclear tests? Is this a nuke? No way, they should be." "Wait," Evie thought. The countdown began, and all the students waited in anticipation. 3, 2, 1, boom. The screen lit up and revealed a giant mushroom cloud. "It is a nuke," Evie thought. Evie put her hand up. She hoped to find out why an average nuke was considered revolutionary. "Yes, Evie, is everything all right?" The teacher asked. "I wanted to know, was this weapon meant to split the atom?" Evie asked. "That's exactly right, Evie. I'm surprised you knew," the teacher said. "I assume humanity may have stumbled upon the possibility of using this sort of weaponry." The teacher questioned. "Actually, we already did use this weaponry," Evie said with a bit of pride. "Wait, what?" the whole class shouted. "Oh my, Evie, that is very incredible, but I simply can't believe it. The Galactic Confederation has been developing these for years. Are you sure you're thinking of the right weapon?" the teacher asked. "Yes, sir, I am sure. My planet was going through an extreme war when we developed these weapons," Evie stated. "A war? But from what I've read, your planet hasn't been in any wars with other planets," the teacher replied, confused. "Well, we've had wars with ourselves," Evie said. "That's unheard of, Evie. Why would your species fight themselves?" the teacher questioned. "That is hard to explain," Evie said. Evie thought for a minute on what to say and finally came up with an answer. "Our species has been fighting for its life since the beginning, and that fight extended to other humans, be it over food, territory, or just for fun," Evie said with a hint of disgust. "We kept on fighting sticks to clubs, clubs to swords, and swords to guns, bombs, and that," Evie said, pointing at the screen. "Thank you for explaining, but that doesn't explain how humanity could create something so advanced," the teacher said. "A simplified explanation is that our top scientists came together to start the Manhattan Project, and in 3 years, they were able to successfully create a machine bomb that could split an atom," Evie said. Evie was always interested in war and machines used in war, though it was really hard to explain something that would come easy to humans. "Thank you for the explanation. I know you're probably not an expert on the subject, so I'll wait until official documents come out so I can fully understand what you are explaining," the teacher said. Having finally regained his composure, deciding that asking a kid to explain things that even he couldn't understand was not the best decision. "Okay," Evie replied, sitting back down as she had stood up to talk. The class went by rather quickly as the teacher told the students about which planets worked on the project and gave a brief summary of the history of the planet. It was now time for lunch. "So, what's your home like?" Ovad asked Evie. "It's nice. I live in a rather large city, but my family goes out hiking a lot. I miss them," Evie said with a sad expression. "I miss mine too, but remember, we can always contact our parents," Ovad replied. "That's true," Evie said, smiling a tiny bit. They got into the dining hall and both went into the carnivore line. Evie looked around at the food and saw what looked like steak. "Looks good," Evie thought. Evie grabbed the piece of meat and a few pieces of shrimp like creatures. Evie then walked past the table Ovad was at. "Hey, I'll be there in a CCE," said, walking to the herbivore line. Everyone in the line was confused but just ignored it. Evie grabbed some fruit that looked like apples and a salad. Evie walked to the table and sat next to Ovad. "I thought you were a predator. Why aren't you just getting meat?" Ovad said. "Well, I'm an omnivore. I can eat both." "Are there no other omnivores?" Evie asked. "I've never heard of anything like that. Humans are very weird," Ovid said. "I guess," Evie said, chuckling. They both started eating and finished about halfway through the lunch period. Evie laid her head down on the table after telling Ovad to wake her up a minute or so before the bell. Evie had not gotten much sleep the night before. Being one of the few students going to multiple galactic schools and basically being an ambassador to her entire species made her extremely nervous, but now she felt better. 29 minutes passed. Evie had fallen asleep, but began feeling taps on her back and brought her head back up. "Thanks," Evie said while stretching. "No problem," Ovad replied. Evie pulled out her schedule and saw what was next. "Gym class," Evie said to herself, smiling. "Wait, will I be able to wear this?" Evie said, looking at her prosthetic. "I'll ask when I get there," Evie thought. Evie walked to the girls' gym restroom and changed. She felt judging looks but ignored them. She was now in her gym uniform and ready to do whatever they were going to do. She sat on a bench next to the now changed Ovad, who looked extremely happy. "What's got you all happy?" Evie asked. "Well, I know what we're doing today, and it's my favorite." "I wanted to surprise you," though Ovid said with a large smile. "All right," Evie said. The gym teacher, a V named Kolner, walked in and began taking attendance. "Today, class, we will be playing a new game that we've been recently informed about," he said. Evie looked over at Ovad, who looked upset. "Hey, maybe next class you can play the game," Evie said, attempting to cheer Ovad up. "The name of this game is dodgeball. The rules are simple. We will place 20 balls in the middle of the gymnasium in a straight line. 2 teams of 10 will be on each side of the line. When I say go, run and grab the balls, then run back to where you started. Now you're able to move around, but don't cross the line where the dodgeballs were placed. Your goal is to hit the other players on the other team with the ball. When you are hit, go off to the side. If you catch the ball, the person that threw the ball is out," Kolner said. "Awesome. This is a human game," Evie said to Ovad. A lot of the students looked nervous. "All right. Let's pick teams," Kolner said.